Yeah.
It's the climax.
Black people know what they want. They have ideas about what freedom and liberation will look like. And it doesn't look like this radical utopia. It looks a lot like the world that white people live in, right? The world that white people live in and never question.
I love being black. I thank God every day that he made me black. I love my black husband. I love the black baby that we're gonna have. I love my black family. I love my black neighbor, Miss Janet. I love my black church. I love my black music. I love all of the things that blackness has given America, whether or not America acknowledges it.
So one of the things that I noticed, right? I'm gonna put these little pictures up here. So on the you only can find it in the on the Netflix background when you're about to click the movie. And it's literally, it reminds you of the Montero article about the creation of Kendi. And you see this white man with a blue tie looking like a Democrat. And then again, I know all black people don't look alike, or all white people look alike, but this could be Kendi. You know, look like locks. He got his African joint. But I can't find that picture nowhere else other than on the Netflix thing. But it seems like somebody mistakenly or jokingly put that up there. Because that whole film is again rooted in this idea of one, they talking about we're in a battle for ideas, but the ideas that they keep leaving out is obviously the people on the black left. They got Kwame Ture speaking very short as a young person, but not really talking about his politics. And so I mean, there's just so much in that film that was kind of interesting.
No, what you referred to right there is what I call the penny trick.
The penny trick.
The penny trick is what Peniel Joseph has, I think, made infamous, which is the symbolic reference to Kwame Ture and others, but only in a frozen, selected moment that never, to your point, investigates the politics of the person. Right. So we get a quick clip of Kwame Ture as a young man. And again, as I made in my note here, this is what Peniel Joseph and others do with the penny trick. It freezes Ture in the 60s when Peniel Joseph and his work on Ture argues was really the only time he was relevant, and then ignores the 30 subsequent years where Peniel Joseph claims in his work that Ture lost relevance to black people in this country and around the world because he moved outside of the mainstream political arena, democratic politics, and so on and so forth, and ignores all of the evidence to the contrary, and ignores all of the late work, ignores his autobiography, ignores the fact that the man lived another 30 years, ignored that the man left us an organization that still exists, that I'm a member of, that, you know, that it leaves out all of that on purpose so that they can have a documentary like this that talks about wealthy white elites, but makes no mention of the word capitalism or colonialism or socialism. Right. Not once is it referenced. And then it can do, as is, I think is the case with a lot of these approaches, become powerful art in service of empire. The subjects become the metaphor for the film itself, for the man himself. That is right. this beautifully produced product that is ultimately in service of nothing. And that's why they center Phyllis Wheatley and the sister that did the inauguration poem. And they, you know, this is like black excellence is black excellence in service of empire. And that's ultimately what this documentary is and all of it. Yeah.
Real quick. So let me
tell a painful truth though. Because when that opening line where the woman was like, black people know what they want, and it's pretty much everything white folks got.
Mm.
So even if you didn't see the film, Diallo, you can answer this question because you saw that one too. But starting with Jared, when you look at that film, do you think if you label it, will it be conservative, liberal, reactionary, counterinsurgent, or would you title it something else.
Can I say something about U.S. media? You know, it's integrationist, and integrationist is what mainstream society pushes as the left, because there is no left in U.S. discourse, U.S. politics, U.S. daily life. There is no left. The left was obliterated with the Palmer raids. You know, the left has been obliterated, not just for Black people, but for white people. So in the United States, the political, Overton window is centrist to right. And so the few people who are in the wilderness, essentially from the left, we're not really part of that discussion. So we find ourselves from the outside debating when centrist liberals, come up and present themselves as the viable alternative to the right wing and the far right and the ultra right. So but that's what's funny about that is that's what happens even in white folks media, in white folks history, in white folks documentaries. You know, they get the same treatment we do. That's just the one thing that was stood out to me. Even when white folks are being presented their history, I mean, if it's really true that we want nothing more than what white folks got in the terms of documenting history, the leftist component is left out of all history in the United States, which has one of the most militantly leftist histories of any country. Of any country. I would put the United States leftist radical history up there with Nicaragua, Cuba, especially throughout Western Europe. There's been some banging hard, and it's been erased from the discourse, been erased from the mass consciousness, and especially being erased from the mainstream media. So, you know, we complain about the absence of the left, but I guess we can sleep well knowing that the left is erased across the board, even in white folks' media.
So part of it, I saw some of the chat. I'm not certainly dissing Phyllis Wheatley or anyone else in this sense. I'm criticizing the way that they're remembered and why they're remembered and the way and why they're presented back to us and for what purpose. So, for instance, there's even reference in the film, and I thought they make an important point in the film, for instance, when they point out that
we can't diss Phyllis Wheatley.
I'm just responding to at least some of the chat. I'm not, but again, I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying I'm not. What I am saying is that when there's a scene where they talk about how "Ain't I a Woman," the famous line attributed to Sojourner Truth was actually written by one of her white benefactors or one of her white wannabe benefactors, and that she never actually said that. To make the point that we are presented a version of our history that is valuable to a white liberal establishment, I don't think that it almost felt like this was the documentary's self-referential, self-justification for its own existence. Maybe the fact that but that's really the point I'm getting at, because ultimately, what is the point of you telling us about Sojourner Truth and Ida B. Wells and Phyllis Wheatley and anyone else? The point is, I don't know, to get us some
integration,
standard integrationist.
Well, listen, integration has failed us, and the integrationists have said the solution or the remedy to failed integration is more integration. And that's all they've been selling us for almost a century now. It's just saying, hey, more integration, more inclusion, more of what Amos Wilson called historical contributionism. If we can demonstrate to white folks what an asset we have been and what a greater asset we could be, the argument for relieving us of oppression is, hey, if you let loose these chains, we could really make even greater contributions. We could be even greater assets and allies to the American projects, to American democracy. wink and nod American imperialism and American capitalism. So that's what it is. It's just they have to keep selling us integration. It's just like Christianity has to be evangelical, because if you just let it stand on its own and let people engage it independently, everybody would be like, wow, this is some dumb shit. I need something else. So the gospel of integration needs constant reinforcement. That's what it is. Integrationism.
I think one of the things that was said in the film was a minute slavery was over, and we got free, we was on go. We got into Congress, we built colleges, we owned property, we voted. And so that was sold a lot. And then also when they was
talking it's true. That part is true. But what they
the point we built the colleges or because that's not true.
That part I heard that line. You're right. Good point.
And then in terms but also in terms of the business, what it's setting you up, and I was waiting for them to say Black Wall Street, but it's setting you up to say that, oh, this is our advantage of success. And they intentionally, when they use Ida B. Wells, they said we was being lynched because we was building wealth. These individuals were building wealth and we was being lynched. And then, but I guess also then Ida B. Wells talked about how the educated was least likely to be lynched. And it was more of the poor Black people. In fact, they even thought that the fewer educated person to stop lynching is to get educated. That was kind of a proposal. So
I didn't get that.
Well, they didn't say that part. What I'm saying, I'm talking about like when they mentioned Ida B. Wells, they said the people were being lynched because they was trying to build wealth. Because they used the one example of the guy who built in the store.
Right.
But before, Ida B. Wells talked about how more poor people got lynched than educated people. Like she talked about this a while ago. Not in the documentary per se, but
can I go out on a limb here? Mm-hmm. Because if you read the book Without Sanctuary, just prior to emancipation, the primary victims of lynching were white males. White males were poor. So lynching they weren't lynching us because we're Black, whether we're Black, poor, or Black. They were lynching us because they're white. We didn't get lynched because we're Black.
But
they lynched us because they're white.
Listen, but that's actually the point. I feel like the film could have done that, right? Because they start off the film, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with Black people? And at that point, they never say anything was wrong with white people, right? That wasn't even a possibility. But yeah, like no, I agree. But what I was saying was the class component of saying that these people are trying to build wealth. And again, they use that one shop owner. They use that one shop owner, and then they just went off on saying like, oh, he was building wealth. Not to say that he was barely getting by, or whatever. So it kind of gives you this.
But a lot of her work was focused on that point, as and that the claims that Black men were raping white women were justification for getting rid of Black business and Black any autonomy, and was often not the case. That was part of what her work did prove. But my point is, so I don't have a problem with that particular. So this is what I'm saying is their version of the penny trick. I don't think they got that part of the history wrong per se. What they did was, even with the reference that we built colleges, I mean, I get it, the white philanthropy and all of that, but some, I believe Professor Favors even argues this a little bit in his work, but some of it is that it was Black people actually performing the work of constructing the curricula, the education, and all of that. But I'm not defending. But I don't think they got that part wrong per se in terms of Black people getting in the game right after so-called freedom. What they leave out is, and this is to me the penny trick, what they leave out is for instance, at minimum, the Du Boisian analysis of the post-Reconstruction era and why Black Reconstruction is such an important work and why so many people who talk about Du Bois often ignore it if they talk about him at all. but in my point being that he offers in fact, one of the chapters I believe is Return to Slavery. He documents how Black advance was met with a racial, class-involved response by the state to suppress and return Black people to the plantation, or to status of the enslaved. So that part they leave out of that. The depth of that analysis is left out so that they can say, I think, to your point, Geechee, the problem, without saying Black people are not the problem, and that white people are the problem. They do, I think, make that point that this is just white people are the problem. And that's why they end the film by saying Black people's problem. The question is something like, we asked, what is wrong with Black people? And it was one of those, what is it? It's like James Baldwin line or whatever. Or, no, not Baldwin. What's my man's name? Who did The Invisible Man? Who said who said I wasn't ashamed and my people were enslaved or slaves. I was ashamed for being ashamed. So this is like ends with a line like that. The question is, what's wrong with Black people? The problem with Black people is that we thought we were the problem. So they don't say white people are the problem, but they do leave that with the, but it's just this vague, white people are the problem.
Ralph Ellison.
Sorry. Right. Ellison. Thank you.
We going elementary Negro history.
Yeah. Right. But
so do you think there was a point, right? So there were a lot of Black women in there, including Angie Davis, that he used as speakers. Mm-hmm. In fact, there might have been all Black women. But there was a point
I think you're right, actually. I don't think there were any Black men.
Yeah, there was a point when
we've had our time.
Kendi was the only one.
All of the Black women took a pause when they were saying how hard it was for Black women to get in on the game. Like they all took a pause about how hard they had to go twice as hard. They got to work twice as hard.
No, I thought that was the moment where they all suffered some direct being told you're not good enough because you're a Black woman.
Yeah.
It was like they've all suffered a specific incident of being told, like their sister was, stop being so ghetto is essentially what she was saying.
On their way to success within empire, right? Because it's not like there's any radical, I guess if you want to call Angie radical on that film. But then when they went to the lynching, there was really, and again, I don't know, maybe this is a sexist thing, but there's no centering of at all of like Black men. If were there more Black men lynched than Black women at the time? Were men being lynched at a higher rate, but like throughout the film, I don't think it had one kind of moment of like Black men have to suffer under this thing. Also, it's just kind of like all the women speaking, and then they all took that pause, like like Angie, I had it hard before I got to.
Well, at one point they make the explicit point. One of the pundits says, yeah, Black men had it bad, but no one had it bad as Black women. So they make the explicit, and I remember, and my reaction to that is often the same, at least, which is my first reaction is, why does that specific point have to be made? And then I come right back to challenge, but to say, baby, it does have to be made. So I go back and forth with that, but my initial reaction is always like, why? I just feel like at the point we're looking at enslavement, the distinction between what happens to men and women seems unfair to say one is just categorically better than the other. It's just like, but that was a clear point.
Right.
Listen, somebody got to get the silver, somebody got to get the gold in the oppression Olympics.
Okay. But to the point I was trying to make with the Du Bois thing, you have Angela Davis there. And for whatever criticism I've had of her political choice, she has done some good work. Hold on, please.
I wasn't saying this, though.
Oh, man. Dang.
Gotcha.
This show can be frustrating sometimes, man. Dang.
Time out.
No,
Jared,
you got it. Oh, yeah, gotcha. Gotcha.
Do you feel that, Jared? Do you feel that interruption? My bad. But do you feel that interruption?
Go ahead, man.
Do you feel it?
In this moment, yes.
Okay,
That's what y'all get for
I'm just
Peter
saying I get interrupted
around the borders of the
My bad.
manosphere.
I didn't mean to kill your.
So what is this? Hurt people, Geechee? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
My
absolutely.
bad, man.
Hurt
Okay.
people today.
Go ahead,
goddamn.
man. Make your point, man.
That's why
I
I'm
was
gonna
just
mute
saying my point
myself.
wasn't
Y'all on
to
this
defend a black man.
manosphere shit. I'm mute myself.
This guy. You needed to say that. You should have just muted yourself. You didn't have to tell us you're gonna excuse yourself. If you were real.
If I was real, a real what? A real man? I'm not a
you
real man.
You see that Erica Jared feeling what I'm feeling, but I'm gonna let them old guys ride. But go ahead. I'm sorry, finish your point. I just wanted to be clear. I was not trying to say we should send a black man in every film. That's all. But go ahead, Jared. I'm sorry for interrupting you, good brother.
It's just that the point was so viciously on time, and I'm not guaranteed to remember it. What I was trying to say is you got to the point I was making about Du Bois. You got Angela Davis sitting there, and for whatever issues I have with her politically here or there, she has done some good work on the history of black women and their enslavement and the particularities of it. But you have her sitting there and don't explore it. It's just sort of, it feels like pot shots are just being taken at men or unnecessarily. I get it. That's what I my follow-up immediately is maybe that's just me being a man and feeling it that way. But the point is, either way, they don't have Angela Davis like break it down, which I think would have been very helpful. Like you instead of just like the moment you take to have the sister tell the story of being told that she was less than, and her response was, well, look at here, expletive. Let me tell you this expletive. And then I'm going to throw my resume on the floor to show my value to empire. Instead of that moment, you could have had that, 90 seconds or so go to Angela Davis, breaking down the intricacies of the experience of women on a plantation. But
Angela on the film says that we need to retool America. So I was just trying to figure out retool it to what? She didn't say destroy, abolish. She just
and then again, to the point, like she's never referenced and included in context of her engagement, even with the Black Panther Party, with Black Liberation, with the Communist Party. She's never really brought around to talk about this stuff. She's, as much as we see from her, that part of her, she's certainly never there to talk about Rochelle McGee. So it's like, dang, she becomes, it's like you're propping her again. She's just propped. And we could get, but I don't know. And it was weird. Like what are people supposed to walk away with from the Stamp documentary? Integrate.
Integrationism. But listen, I think the two dominant agendas and ideologies in the Black community is integration, but there's what a lot of people because there's this meme floating around where I call it resurrectionism or back in the dayism, where a lot of Black people want to return to the to the pre-civil rights era, and they like quoting business ownership and marriage statistics and show pictures of Black men wearing suits and hats and as opposed to sagging jeans and tank tops. And so we got,
which came up,
who want to return to that, we had it, how good things were. And so I think both of these are two regressive ideas battling it out when nobody's really talking about advancing us or towards liberation. Is it integration or segregation, as if the two options that white folks put on the tables are all Black folks have to choose from?
I would go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
She's talking about replacing the tools of white hegemony, but with what though?
Black hegemony.
Black hegemony or Black women hegemony? Black girl
Black women hegemony.
So listen, real quick. So there was this idea of Black progress being terrifying, right? They kept saying Black progress being terrifying, and then
I ain't scared of
then they pushed Barack and MLK together, right? I think in that clip, and I guess I'm wondering, is it Kendi or whatever his name is? Not Kendi, because Kendi is the one in the UK.
Yeah. Ibram X Kendi.
Kendi. Yeah, but
X.
Just like Kendi.
Don't you worse to me with a song for everything, bro. But real quick, this not elevator. Ida B. Wells quote I was quoting when she was saying education is suggested as a preventative, but it is as grave a crime to murder an ignorant man as it is a scholar. True, few educated men have been lynched, but the hue and the cry once started stops at the bounds. So like what I was trying to say in that point, because something I was reading about her, it said that at one point they say, well, maybe to stop lynching, you should just get educated. And then I'm saying using that as a contradiction to the idea of saying that we were only being educated because we was trying to build wealth. Just kind of lays a line for every time that we try to succeed, which when we going to get to with the, building wealth in Black Atlanta, Black women in Atlanta, Black business owner, despite the numbers, are saying that people are trying to prevent them from building wealth.
Girl boss.
Say what?
Girl bosses.
Girl bosses with no employees. But yes. But I think that
girl bosses don't want to exploit labor and extirpate the wealth of others.
They want to, they just don't have the capital.
So okay, I have to hear you going back to manosphere business.
I'm just saying they do. I mean, they want
these females.
They're applying for grants to try to get so they can pay the employees. Aren't we supposed to create jobs? That's what entrepreneurship is about, right?
But listen, F the signifier, I really liked this Swirl Economics video he did. And one of the points that he makes in making fun of those are fit and fresh and flit or whatever they were, that they exposed a flaw in the algorithm, which is that if you talk bad about Black women, your numbers go up.